Welcome to another episode of the Esports Next Podcast. I am your host, John Davidson, and I am excited to be joined by Gerald Solomon, who is the founder and executive director of NASEF. Gerald, thank you for joining me today.
It's a pleasure, John. Thank you for having me. It's great to see you after a wonderful conference you had in Chicago.
Thank you so much. I was going to say it's fantastic to see you virtually after seeing you physically, which, so often nowadays we see so many different people virtually quite often. And so it was just so great to connect just last week at Esports Next in Chicago. And you and NASEF were the winners of the Educator of the Year award. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. What a wonderful honor from a great organization. We really value that.
Really appreciate that. Well, for the few people who don't know, out of all of those are listening, give us an idea. What is NASEF? How do you differentiate from some of these other scholastic entities in the esports space? And what is the value that you're providing to schools and students?
Well, you're asking a question that's going to take 20 minutes to answer, but I'll try to keep it small.
Perfect.
I'll give you a little snippet. So NASEF is an acronym for the Network of Academic and Scholastic Esports Federations. It really is one of two verticals within a global nonprofit known as WWSEF, or Worldwide Scholastic Esports Foundation. NASEF is the education and scholastic arm, and then we have a competition arm called USEF, which is the United States Esports Federation, which has the exclusive rights to all competitive play at international level for the two major global organizations, IESF and GEF. But NASEF is the education arm, born and bred out of a collaboration when I worked and ran the Samueli Foundation in Orange County in partnership with the University of California and the Orange County Department of Ed to connect learning and play through the lens of the digital space of esports.
I love that. I have a 9-year-old son who I talk about all the time, so probably a lot of people know, but I just love from the first person experience. My son loves gaming and he's always had a great vocabulary, but this kid knows so many minerals that he should not know at 9 years old because he's playing Minecraft all the time.
There you go.
Right? And it's just, there are so many aspects of esports and broader gaming, of course, that enable us to engage kids in their greatest passion and the thing that they are most interested in. And I kind of take it from the standpoint of, for a long time, administrators would fight against like laptops, computers in the classroom. Now every kid's got an iPad, every kid's got a laptop in the classroom, right? It was like, you need a book. And I think about it as, another step in that evolution in the same way is even a greater probably argument is because we have the laptops in the classroom and every kid is a gamer. There's just such great ways to integrate curriculum and utilize that passion to retain kids, to engage them, to increase attendance. And I believe there's quite a few different metrics of success for the schools that are doing that.
Yeah, so I'll tell you a little story that I think will resonate with the listeners here. And that is, for thousands of years, mankind has learned through immersive experiential learning. We call it today project-based learning. You learn by doing. And we did that for many, many years, especially as man evolved. And then we became a full agrarian society. How did we know what to plant, when to plant, how to harvest, when to harvest, the role of the moon, the sun, water, et cetera, et cetera? You learn by immersive experience. Then came the Industrial Revolution, and the world changed, and we became robots as people. We no longer wanted innovative, creative individuals. We wanted people to do tasks. What ended up happening then with the technology world as it evolved is we didn't want tasks anymore. We wanted to go back to that innovative, creative world of immersive experience. But our educational systems, not only in the US, but around the world, were all geared and developed for that industrial revolution. So what has happened now is kids have found themselves, one, bored with school because it's retained that old kind of industrial revolutionary mindset. And two, they want the experience. They want to see the real world application of what it is that they're learning. And they're finding that the space to do that is something that I, in my generation, and maybe you and others, weren't born into. We had to develop it. And that's called that digital space. In a kid's world, like your 9-year-old son, I
Yeah,
would venture to say that he doesn't make a distinction between the physical and digital world. People now
correct.
call it the phygital world. It
Yeah.
all blends. And what we were able to do, just fortunately, with the right people and the right educators, is to put the two together and to allow kids to enjoy, meet them where they were, speak their language, and go back to that immersive experiential learning, which is
Mm.
what you can do in Minecraft, what you could do in Roblox, what you can do in so many different titles through social emotional learning, through STEM education, through all of these different types of things. And it really is the tool and the vehicle for societies to progress today, especially when you think about workforce skill development and upskilling.
Yeah, that's a great summary. And you hit the nail on the head with my son's phygital perspective of the world. And I'll give you two examples. One, of course, is he greatly values in-game items, right? And so he is obviously very willing to spend money, my hard-earned money,
Yeah, the checkbook.
to purchase in-game skins and such. And older generations think like, why does that matter? It matters. It's like, well, that's my play area. That's my social circle. That's where I want, I value putting money in there to get things that are valuable to me. The other thing, which I absolutely love, but thought was a little silly when we first started doing it, is there are times when we'll be at the park, no screens around us, and he'll say, "Dad, do you want to play Minecraft?" Like, how do you play? And we pretend like we're mining stuff. And he'll go around and he'll be like, "Oh, we need wood." And he's describing what he needs for his crafting table in the game in order to put together the things we need. And then we fight the invisible dragon, you know,
That's
or
awesome.
or whatever. Yeah, and he's got just a great imagination as well. But that's a perfect example of both sides of the phygital, ecosystem is the digital and the physical worlds. Go ahead.
Yeah. And John, that's really an expression of innovation and entrepreneurship. Those are things you don't learn in school. You can regurgitate facts. You can learn in the old narrative of the teacher in front of the classroom and teaching and answering questions. But to experience, to be innovative and creative, that's what employers want. That's what society needs. That's how we solve the fundamental problems that are the sustainable goals, put forth by the United Nations. Those are the things that we need to create that our educational systems are not good at anymore. And their evolution is very slow and very difficult.
Hmm. Well, you mentioned employers there. Can you share a little bit about what are those opportunities for our children who are currently gamers as they are going through school, training, learning, etc., to become the workforce of tomorrow?
Sure. So I'll have to differentiate between our work, which is a curriculum built by the University of California, approved by the Department of Education in California. We're still the only ones that not only have a Department of Ed fully approved curriculum for middle school, high school, and CTE, but as you know, we've been recognized by 100.org, Supercell, yourself, AISTS, and the education arm of the International Olympic Committee as the gaming curriculum for esports. And what we do, if you look at the circle behind me, our infographic is we focus on the skills that employers want You can learn how to change a nut and a bolt. You can learn how to do a task, but you can't learn in a traditional classroom the concept of teamwork, the concept of leadership, of critical thinking, of what we call innovation and entrepreneurship, content creation, organizational management, etc., strategic thinking. Those are the skills that when you apply our programming into a game environment, they then acquire those. And best of all, we ask all of our thousands of clubs around the world, because as you know, we're global, we want kids to maintain digital portfolios. We want them to show the artifacts that they're learning through their gameplay. So that when they're creating a website, or they're doing social media, or they're putting on an event using Excel, or they've done a Minecraft activity using Redstone coding, or whatever it may be, begin to manage all of that. Because when you talk to an employer, it's no longer tell me a grade point average. I want to know what you do. I want to know what you've created. Show me what you've done, because there are 1,000 people who have 4.0s and 700s on their SAT scores. Show me. And that's what we're able to do in our approach. It's not a workbook. It's not like most everything else out there, which is here, learn how to do this, answer these questions, and boom. It's experiential. And that's a real differentiator for us to all the
I
others.
love that. Well, I love that. I think there's a term, and I'm probably gonna screw it up, but it was something like the A students become teachers and the C students become entrepreneurs, or it's something like that,
Yeah.
And it's a great point too, because class, and it's important to excel in the classroom, of course, but classroom skills can be very different than what can make you excel outside of the classroom, and that can work both ways. You can have some kids who are tremendous in the classroom and they go into the workforce and might struggle, and they say, oh no, let me become an educator or something else. At the same time, you may have the typical story where you got the kid who struggles in the classroom. In fact, my great uncle actually, his highest level of education was a tech high school. He later became one of the greatest metallurgists of all time and held the patent of welding steel and copper together during World War II. Dale Bonham, look him up. So he was one of the head designers of the first space shuttle and things in Mountain View, California. And the reason I bring him up is a perfect example of somebody who did not thrive in school, had no interest in school, but had tremendous skills that were beneficial in the workforce. The reason I bring that up is I remember going to college, getting a marketing degree. And then I was so eager to go to an agency and say, now I want to learn how to really do it, right? And it's so common that employers will take new graduates and they'll say, great, we know you're smart and you're organized. Now let's teach you how to do this job, but you have pretty much zero experience that is relevant to the job, other than you show up on time and you can keep things organized, and then I'll teach you how.
It's funny. We don't teach esports skills. We teach transferable skills. The things that I'm talking about and you're referencing are skills that transcend industries, that transcend job titles, ways in which, like your great uncle, had the ability to be innovative, to trial and error. One of the things that we don't do in school is we don't honor failure. We do in our program. FAIL to us is an acronym that says first attempt in learning. When you play sports, what's the first thing that happens if you're losing a basketball game or you lost a game? You sit down, you figure out what you did wrong, and you try to play better next time. That's what we try to do in our practices and how we work and how we teach. We actually honor and respect failure because that's how you learn.
I really can resonate with that as a skateboarder, as you can see the skateboards behind me and such. And one thing is I've had a lot of business conversations, getting my business career, post skateboarding career, is what's interesting in skateboarding is failure is not looked down upon at all. And in fact, at a certain point, it's lauded, meaning if you fall super hard and you get it right back up and keep skating, guys are like, that dude's tough and all these things. Also, in professional skateboarding, guys are doing stuff that's never been done before. I won't go all into it, but pro skateboarders and video parts are doing tricks that have never been done on that obstacle ever before by anyone else. Sometimes it takes multiple trips to a spot, days, weeks, months to get one trick. And at some point, it's even looked upon even more impressively as like, whoa, you went back that many times? Now,
Persistence, grit,
right.
big skills. Yeah.
Now, there's also something for you did that first try or you did that within a few tries, but I've, it took me so long to really connect my view of failure in skateboarding to my view of failure in other things. Because I had this natural, healthy view of failure with skateboarding, but then when I was other aspects of my life, when I failed, I did not have that same perspective. And so it's really cool to hear how you are teaching kids these things and linking that. So it's trying, learning, improving rather than just an A or an F.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And then when you go to an employer and you show them the artifacts in your digital portfolio, and you can then describe the process, those steps you went through, your persistence, your grit, your ability to learn from mistakes, your ability to work through, to be mentored, to coach, all of those different pieces. Ultimately, those are the skills that your employer wants, because your
Right.
grades have already demonstrated you're smart, that you have capability to learn tasks. But all of those other pieces are the things that are not taught, that we try to deeply incorporate into our work. And our clubs that we have are more than kids that show up. They have to set up committees along all the lines behind me. They have to build a business plan. They have to build a website. They have to build the social media presence. They have to create events. They have to do all of these tasks that encourage them to create that portfolio, to try, fail, learn, and grow and develop.
Well said. I'm very curious as we are seeing the adoption of esports, especially in education. What is your experience being the founder of NASEF? When you first started compared to the conversations you're having nowadays?
That's a really funny story. So I was fortunate enough to run the Samueli Foundation for many years. And in 2018, because I co-founded something called the STEM Learning Ecosystem, which had like 90 cities and brought educators and business and industry together. I brought them all to Santa Ana, California during an event that we hosted, over 400 people from around the country. And I
Well,
brought them to the Santa Ana Esports Arena. And I showed them in 2018 what I thought STEM education could be learned through esports. And I will say, out of 400 people, 395 thought I was nuts. They looked at me and go, why in the world, when you're focused on STEM education, are you bringing me to a gaming and esports arena? Now, 5 years later, and I'm able to show not only our curriculum, but all the lessons learned and all the capacity. It's a completely different conversation.
wow.
It was an immense struggle at first. People thought, candidly, that I was just off the wall.
Yeah.
And I was just fortunate. I had the opportunity when the principals of the foundation said, come up with something creative about how we can expand pipelines for engineers and scientists and technologists, to come across the concept of esports and said, wow, this is the untapped resource of the future for workforce development. And they, were progressive enough to buy into it, to fund it, to develop it, to get it to where it is today.
That's amazing. And that, I mean, 5 years, from that conversation you were talking about to today, I mean, that is a huge shift in a relatively short span of time. Do you think COVID really helped with that adoption, or what were some other
Yeah,
factor?
I think COVID played a significant role. If I may give you an example, I'll just try to keep it really succinct. We had a relationship with the US State Department that we were developing, and we got a call from the Mexico City State Department folks at the embassy. And Alejandro Barron and his people down at the Benjamin Franklin Library and said, we have a challenge. The public school system in Mexico City during COVID, as it was starting, no kids were learning. No one was signing on. No one was participating in anything. Could you help us? We created a Minecraft competition where kids had to build the COVID virus, the COVID home they wanted to live in, and the COVID hospital they would be treated in, all
Oh,
in Minecraft. To do that, they had to learn about the virus. They had to learn about antidotes and vaccines. They had to learn about architecture. They had to learn about engineering design. In less than 45 days, we had 3,000 kids in Mexico City Public School participating in our program. We opened the door
wow.
for them to see the value of how you can gamify learning and connect kids back into an education system. We took advantage of that. And that was really the beginning of our trajectory about our expansion and our growth.
Well, arguably one of the few positives during education during COVID is that was a very challenging time for many educators, especially some of my friends who were teachers trying to teach elementary school children from home through Zoom, which goodness gracious, I cannot imagine. If I am a school or a school district or what have you, if I am not yet utilizing esports, I'm watching this episode, I'm wondering, how do I get started with that? What are those steps to get involved with NASEF?
Yeah, so first is a global NGO and nonprofit, and because we were built philanthropically, our sign up, our joining, and our curriculum is 100% free. We do charge for the more detailed professional development work in some of our bigger kind of academy classes that are credentialed, but 90% of our work is free to anyone. You go to our website, there's a little orange button that says join NASEF. You sign up, it's free. We collect no student data. So we respect the concept of privacy for students. It's up to the teacher to maintain and manage, and you join and you participate. And you can participate in our Minecraft type competitions. We do Rube Goldberg around engineering design. We did a program on business development called Venture Valley. And then we do traditional gameplay like Rocket League and Fortnite and those types of things. But it's free. And once you sign up, it's kind of like the Wizard of Oz, the curtain pulls back and you have access to all of this information. If you can use it on your own and you know how to do it, great, it's all free. But if you say, you know, I really like this, but I could use a little bit of training, that's where you take, for example, our class called 8 Steps of Success. How do you build a club in a school or a district? How do you coach? How do you get certified? Because of my work on IESF, the International Board, the largest esports organization in the world, you can get credentialed as a international coach. And you could go through those processes. And there's some cost involved, but it's like $99, $199. I mean, it's not a lot of money. So it's from free to a freemium model, depending upon where you're at and what your needs are.
That's really neat. You know, when we look at the competitive esports global landscape, we see esports is typically more international than domestic from the perspective of the United States. However, we have a lot of brand sponsorships and competitions and stuff here because many brands are headquartered in the United States. And so you're able to get those domestic dollars if you're, whether you have a team here or you're doing competitions here, what have you.
Mhm.
From the educational perspective, how are you seeing globally the adoption of utilizing esports in education? Is that, you know, more US, more Europe, Asia, Australia, elsewhere? What's that looking like?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. I am very fortunate that because of our global expansion, and we have 33 countries that are our affiliates. We have offices in NASEF China, NASEF Japan, and now we're building one, NASEF Montenegro in Europe. Um, I have had, fortunately, the experience of multiple cultures. You can imagine they're all different. You go from one state to another state, it's like going from one country to another country. There are some that are more open and progressive, and there are others that are much more conservative that you have to go through the research. And that's part of what, again, we have that's a differentiator. We have a 4-year IRB approved study from the University of California. We have a study from the city of Busan in South Korea. We have an AISTS, which is an International Olympic Committee Education Arm study. And then we have awards like the one you graciously gave us that demonstrate the credibility and the quality of what we have to offer. And if you sit down with a parent or an educator and you say, we can teach STEM in a way that your students will enjoy and appreciate it, we can connect real world life with what they're learning, and we could show by evidence and research how you can do that, they're open in most cases to listening. Not all of them will do it, and some people do it at different timelines, but it's much more receptive when you can come with data, when you can come with evidence and research that's uncontroverted.
Very interesting. Yeah, just the adoption, it's like you're saying, even state to state inside the United States, and we're still opening people's minds as we go. I'm really interested in the end result, meaning the job placement, the career opportunities. I see this graphic behind you. It's one I'm very familiar with because every time I interact with NASEF anything, you've got this graphic. Isn't there a certain, did you have a certain name for it?
That's a good question. I just call it the NASEF infographic. Some
Okay.
people say it's like a baseball diamond. Some people put whatever, word, verbiage they want to it. But it really is just kind of our pathway, of how we do things. And it wasn't created by us. It was actually created by Constance Steinkuhler and Mimi Ito and Katie Salen, noted professors at the University of California who actually
Yeah.
built this. And that's what the model of our curriculum is based on.
I love that because those who are watching, so Gerald has this infographic behind him, I should say those who are listening, and it's got in the middle it says players and gamers, and then there's four bubbles around it. We've got strategists, content creators, entrepreneurs, organizers, and then each of there's multiple career opportunities per each one of those. For example, content creators has software developers, shoutcasters, streamers, journalists, etc. Um, One thing that people are having their eyes open to now is that when we talk about career opportunities through esports, we're not just talking about being on the stage as a pro player, being a coach, being a content creator, producing the live event. We're talking about, and I'm going to read directly off your graphic here, business developers, corporate sponsorship, general managers, analysts, theory crafters, fandom art and media. And these can be in all industries, not just esports. And to go a step further, I would say these are also digital native individuals who are set up to develop the skills for the workforce of today and tomorrow.
You're hired.
I'll take it.
That's exactly right. It's what I referred to earlier. I'll give you one simple example. If you can put on an esports event, which is really challenging and very intricate and detailed, whether you use Excel or whatever tool you use, entities like Marriott, Hyatt, Hilton, Boeing, Northrop Grumman, large companies that do big events and organizations, they want you. They want people that know that we can put these kinds of activities on and manage these things. Art institutions, museums, libraries, these are all skills that are transferable into multiple industries.
Absolutely. I once years ago, I was at a Big 12 athletics convention, and Mark Cuban was there in person speaking on a panel. And I'm always interested to hear what a billionaire thinks. They've been successful.
Sure.
One thing he said, when I'm doing hiring for Mark Cuban companies, whether it be the Dallas Mavericks or others, I'm much more likely to hire a gamer. Because if I know that you actively play League of Legends, I know that your mind has to work in a certain way. You have to work with a team in a certain way. You're able to balance your strengths with, complementary strengths of your team members, and you're
Yeah.
making all these decisions, etc. So we're not just losing our minds to screen time. One quote I heard one time, which really changed my perspective, even though I was still deep in this industry already. Not all screen time is created equal. And I'll tell you, this is really funny. Real quick story. I don't want to take away too much of your time here,
I'm
but
going to leave you with one example when you're done. So keep on going, and
perfect.
then I'll leave you with an example.
I'll keep it short. I was sitting in church the other day. I was early for the first time in a long time. And so I'm sitting there waiting for the service to start. And there's these two ladies, two moms right behind me. And they were just chit-chatting away, and they're talking about their kids gaming. And they don't know what I do for a living, and I'm just kind of lean my head back a little to hear the conversation. And one woman says the other, she says, yeah, my kids are just on these games so often. She said, I find myself getting my kid to stop playing video games to come watch TV with me because it's less digital. And I was this close, Gerald, to turn it around, and I thought, I'm not going to waste my breath. But
Yeah.
what's so hilarious is thinking this, and we preach balance, of course. You got to get outside, you got to move around, and all of these things. But with this specific example, this mother is taking her child and having the child stop a more engaging action with the brain to do something that is far more passive and not nearly as healthy because she's just uninformed.
And that's part of what the challenge is to Scholastic Esports, not esports, but Scholastic Esports. I-
Yeah,
I'll I'll leave you, if I may, because I know we're getting close to an end, with a personal story.
please.
About a year ago, I had a problem and I needed some oral surgery. And I went to interview oral surgeons. I'm pretty thorough on how I, analyze and do due diligence on things. So I interviewed three different oral surgeons. I ended up picking one for the following reason. I got to know them. I asked them questions. Who are you? What do you do? What's your history? Tell me what your hobbies are. What brought you into being an oral surgeon? And the guy that I chose said, when I was in college and I was in med school, to occupy my time, I played Halo. And what happened was I realized when it came time for me to determine the discipline I was going to go into medicine, I had great dexterity. I had
Wow.
the ability to use my hands and my fingers in a way that really I could use to monetize and perform and do good. And I said to myself, you're my doc. You're the guy that if I have a problem, you're the one who's going to be in my mouth and my face doing what needs to be done because you've demonstrated a skill set that no one else has talked about in what I needed for what, I needed medically.
Wow. What a great real world example and a personal example of that. We talk a lot of times about, yeah, the ability to use a controller to fly a drone or, remote surgery, right? Where now we have robots that are doing surgery with, the doctor not even physically there at times. And so that ability, or even air traffic control, you're making all of these high pressure, quick decisions, a lot of things happening at once. And because your brain has been trained on video games doing this a lot, you're just set up very well to develop those skills. Just a couple questions for you. First of all, is there anything coming up with NASEF that we should look forward to? Anything that you can share or tease?
Ah, gosh, there's always something new in the horizon. And most of the time we don't know what that is. And it's really a tribute to our staff and their malleability and flexibility. We're going to be doing FarmCraft again with the US State Department. Last year, we had over 12,000 students from 70 countries that participated. Um, We're going to be doing a number of activities, both in competition and in learning. We're expanding upon our academy. We've been invited to the World Food Forum for a second year in Rome to present on our farmcraft work. Most kids think of agriculture as a pick, a hoe, and a shovel. Agriculture today is about drones and biochemistry and biotechnology. And we use Minecraft to teach those skills around what the future of agriculture could be. So it's really a lot about how do we practice what we preach? How do we create innovative opportunities for kids to play and learn, at the same time? And we're very fortunate to have quality partners, including, ESTA, your organization, which really brings people together that allows them to share ideas, to build a community, to talk through and think through opportunities that advance the individual who's a member, but also the society and the association of what the esports community is about. And that's why it's a personal pleasure for us to be a member of your organization, and even a greater honor to have been recognized, for our achievements within the field.
Well, it's our pleasure, and it's really fantastic members like yourselves who really have a passion for the community and that willingness to really serve alongside others to help grow this industry better together than apart. Last question for you is simply, how can people get in touch with you or your team in ways that you'd like them to?
Yeah, so we're pretty much an open book. I mean, it's info@nasef.org. That's our general mailbox. Mine is easy. It's my first name, Gerald@nasef.org. We're free. You join for free. You participate for free. We don't charge for competitions. We don't charge for our curriculum. So it's really open to everyone and anyone, any student around the world. And that's why we have built the relationships we have and have the opportunity to do what we do. One final example, if I may, we just did a year-long program in Indonesia. We're in partnership with the American Corners. There are 9 of them. We built out our programming in each of those 9 spaces. And then we had them play amongst themselves, learn our model. And then thanks to funding from the embassy in Jakarta, we brought them all to Jakarta for 3 days of learning, 3 days of play, 3 days of community building. And we have transformed what the ecosystem of esports from a scholastic lens can look like in an entire country. That's the kind of work that we're trying to do around the world.
I love that. Well, if you are listening or watching to this episode, I greatly urge you to get in touch with Gerald and his team. Just absolutely love the way that you guys are embracing esports, supporting students, and building that pipeline to create successful careers. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Esports Next podcast.
Thank you, John, and thank you for the honor, and thank you for all you do.
My pleasure.